The EFF rejects opposition parties as coalition partners, but pledges support for the DA. While the DA confirms that Athol Trollip will be mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay. Hello and welcome to it. You're watching eNews Direct. I'm Duduzile Ramela.
And I'm Sandy Legangose. Good evening.
To comment on any of our stories, you can find us on Twitter and Facebook. That's at eNews Direct.
And you can also track our main stories using these hashtags: Coalitions, ESCOM, and Caster for Gold.
We start with this. DA mayoral candidates in Nelson Mandela Bay and Tshwane are all but guaranteed to take over these metros. This after the EFF pledged its votes in council to the DA, but chose to take up opposition benches and not join coalition governments. The party's leader, Julius Malema, says going into a coalition with what he says is a corrupt ANC would have been an insult to South Africans. The EFF are kingmakers in hung metros and other towns in Gauteng, Eastern Cape, Limpopo and the Northwest.
The coalition politics chess game that the EFF has been playing since the elections was evident, even in their choice of venue for the announcement. Here in the severely underdeveloped Stretla, Alexandra, the Reds made their checkmate move, rejecting offers to co-govern with either the ANC or the DA in councils like Tshwane, Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni and Nelson Mandela Bay.
We will not be going into a coalition with anyone. Therefore, the EFF will be assuming its seats as an opposition.
But that was just half the move. The rest of it, nothing short of a body blow for the ANC.
We'll be voting for DA in Tshwane, in Ekurhuleni, in Johannesburg, in PE.
The EFF says neither the ANC nor the DA could meet its preconditions for a coalition. These included expropriation of land without compensation, nationalization of mines, removal of President Jacob Zuma, and even dropping distem from the national anthem.
We'll vote for the opposition because the ANC must be removed from power. And this is the start of removing the ANC from power.
In councils like Tshwane and Nelson Mandela Bay, the EFF's support means the path to City Hall is clear for Solim Simanga and Athol Trollip. Thulasizwe Simelane, Johannesburg.
Athol Trollip will be the mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay. The DA has formed a coalition with the ACDP, UDM, COPE and the Freedom Front Plus.
The premature celebration of victory by one political party over the last few days is false, misleading and an act of desperation.
The ANC's vow to fight for Nelson Mandela Bay seems to have fizzled out. Opposition parties led by the DA have joined forces, giving them the numbers required to govern the metro.
The DA, the UDM, COPE and the ACDP have agreed to cooperate together in a multi-party government. That government will be established tomorrow at the council meeting, and we have enough seats to do that. And the EFF have also made it clear that they will be voting for the opposition and not the ANC, so now there is no doubt that we will have a new government tomorrow.
Trollip says the DA's priority is to fight corruption and improve service delivery in the municipality. The parties also secured backing from the economic freedom fighters. Trollip says he welcomes the endorsement, adding that it's significant for the future of democracy.
They essentially said that we both have problems. They have problems with the ANC and the DA, but they said they don't regard the DA as corrupt.
The new government will be ratified at a council sitting on Thursday.
And joining the chorus of opposition parties that have made their coalition negotiations public, the eNCA Freedom Party says it will be holding on to its individuality. The party won't be forming any coalitions, but will rather cooperate with other parties.
Following in the footsteps of its opposition peers, the eNCA Freedom Party announces it too will be cooperating with the EFF and DA instead of the ANC.
A collegial decision was taken for the IFP to work in cooperation with the DA and EFF in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal.
Even though the ANC won 57.7% of the votes in KZN, the IFP believes that its increased votes serve as proof that voters aren't keen on coalitions.
The significant increase in support of the IFP in KwaZulu-Natal confirms that the electorate has rejected the ANC-NFP coalition that took over 19 hung municipalities in 2011.
There are 6 hung councils in the IFP's stronghold, where they secured over 1.7 million votes in the local government elections. Governance trumps party ideology.
Let us focus on service delivery, no corruption, and ensuring that our people get the best out of governance at local municipalities.
Meetings later this week in Johannesburg will clarify what positions in various municipalities members of the IFP will get. Piledi Sithusa, Parliament.
Well, it seems the EFF has outmaneuvered its peers and scored a brilliant political goal. The country's third largest party has turned out to be the kingmaker in hung municipalities. And while the strategy could pay off in the long run, they've made it clear to their voters that while they'll lend the DA their vote, they won't be forming coalitions.
Tshwane and Nelson Mandela Bay municipalities and possibly Johannesburg are set to be run by the Democratic Alliance. This as the DA has now signed coalition agreements with COPE, the ACDP, the Freedom Front Plus, the IFP and the UDM. But it needs the support of the EFF to make this a reality.
Clearly a coalition is better because it's easier to handle. There are agreements in place that are medium to longer term. What the vote in this case indicates is support at this first hurdle to get the DA into power, that there's no policy agreement, that once you're in power, we will hold you to account much the way in which they hold the ANC to account in the National Assembly.
The contentious metros have an interesting mix of numbers. In the country's capital, the DA needs 15 votes and the ANC 19 votes. And with the EFF's pledge of support, it means Salim Simang is headed to City Hall. However, in the country's economic hub, things are still up in the air, as the DA and the EFF still try to iron out issues regarding its mayoral candidate.
If the EFF is not voting for or with the DA on, say, a budget issue, you could have what you had in Oudtshoorn, where you have a deadlock and budgets are not passed.
The governance in these 3 metros aren't going to be ideal. But for now, it seems keeping the ANC out of power in the country's key councils is the main focus. Jody Jacobs, Johannesburg.
Let's focus on to other news now. It's estimated that the country could lose as many as 60,000 jobs in the beverage industry over the proposed tax on sugary drinks. The new sugar tax is due to take effect next April. The beverage sector employs approximately 200,000 people. Jobs that could be on the line include workers at smaller shops and vendors in the informal sector. It's also expected that manufacturers will increase the prices of healthier drinks to subsidize losses. In world news, Australia has agreed to close a controversial detention centre in Papua New Guinea. The ultimate fate of 800 asylum seekers and refugees being held there, however, is unclear. Harsh conditions and reports of abuse at the camps have drawn widespread criticism. Seoul has confirmed that a top North Korean diplomat in London has defected, arriving in South Korea with his family. Tai Yong-ho was deputy ambassador in the UK and had been due to return to Pyongyang with his wife and children. A South Korean official said Tai, who is now under the government's protection, had cited disgust at the regime of the North's Kim Jong-un. And in the U.S., a rapidly moving wildfire east of Los Angeles has forced the evacuation of more than 80,000 people. The fire broke out in a mountain pass yesterday and has already engulfed at least 6,000 hectares. About 700 firefighters are battling the so-called Blue Cut Fire, the latest in a series of wildfires that have blackened over 120,000 hectares of the drought-parched U.S. West.
Time now to welcome back Duduzile. Literally, where's all of your social media?
Thank you so much, Sandile. The Independent Police Investigative Directorate Head of Investigations, Matthews Sisoko, has been dismissed. Sisoko suspended IPID boss Robert McBride and Innocent Kuba, former provincial head in Limpopo, were accused of unlawfully altering a report into the alleged illegal rendition of Zimbabwean nationals during November 2010 and January 2011. Sisoko was charged with gross misconduct involving dishonesty and defeating the ends of justice. We end with this. The petroleum industry strike has ended. The National Petroleum Employers Association and SAPAU have reached a 2-year agreement. Workers will receive a 7% increase in the first year instead of the 9% they'd initially demanded. This will be increased by 1.5% in the second year. Striking workers now have until next week to return to work. Remember, if you've missed any of our stories, you can, of course, check them out on Twitter and Facebook. That's at eNews Direct, or you can head on over to our website. That's eNCA.com/direct. After the break, your business news as well as your weather forecast. In Money Matters, South African wholesalers and general dealers are still keeping their businesses afloat amid low growth conditions. Retail sales grew by just 1.7% year on year, coming in lower than expected.
Recent polls forecasted a 3.8% year-on-year increase for South Africa's retail trade sector, but the 1.7% growth fell short of that figure. On a month-on-month basis, sales decreased by 2%, but were up 2.6% in the 3 months to June. Some analysts think the figure is positive given the current economic situation.
The degree of competition amongst the general dealers is heating up, and you only have to go into the likes of a ShopRite, a Pick n Pay, a Woolies, for example, any of the multiples, to see the kind of promotions and the promotional activity that's taking place. So the competition's there. It's difficult because some of the margins they're operating on are very, very thin indeed. But if you can get your buying right and you can offer the cash-strapped consumer what he or she wants, you really are doing very, very well indeed. And I think that's indicative of what's happening out there. Competition very fierce and getting even more fierce.
Gilmore says wholesalers will capitalize on the rand's gains and a decreased fuel price. However, low trade sales points to the country's fragile economy. Consumers have hit the brakes on their high spending habits as a result of high prices for goods and services as well as high debt. Pharmaceuticals and medical goods, cosmetics and toiletries contributed to the most trade sales over the winter period, followed by food and beverages. However, general dealers and wholesalers are still expected to battle, selling big ticket items like furniture and electronics. Athol Trollip, Johannesburg.
Let's see how the markets perform today. Let's check in with the Weather Center. Here's Louis.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Weather Centre. Quite a busy satellite picture for your Wednesday, with fog that moved in along the west coast, cooling things down for some parts of that area, while a trough system is still busy moving in over the Cape provinces, resulting in showers and thunderstorms developing for some areas, in particular over the Western Cape, where scattered storms developed already early in the day and spread towards the southern coastline. Let's look ahead to Thursday now, and we are expecting KwaZulu-Natal to be mostly dry, although in the south of the province there is going to be a possibility for a few isolated thunder showers. Scattered showers and thunderstorms all across the Eastern Cape. That will already be taking place from morning, and we're going to see wet weather cooling things down for some areas, especially in the mountainous areas where temperatures will remain below the 20-degree mark. Dry once again along the western coastline, but there will be rain along the south coast, including towards the Garden Route, and a few thunder showers for the Karoo areas in the Western Cape. And there'll also be wet weather for some areas in the Northern Cape, including around Sutherland. You could have a few thunder showers already in the morning, and things are slowly going to clear from further westwards as the day goes on. For the Free State, a likelihood for a few thunder showers over the western and southern parts, drier in the north for Welkom, Bethlehem, as well as Harrismith. And it's going to be another dry day for the northwest, partly cloudy in Vryburg, but we don't expect any rainfall for your area. Things clearing up over the low felt on Thursday afternoon, helping to warm the temperatures into the upper 20s for some places. And in Mpumalanga, it's also going to be a pleasant day once again. A bit of cloud cover for the eastern parts of the province, but we don't expect any precipitation. And finally, into Gauteng, very little change for the province. It's going to be another mild afternoon for Johannesburg, reaching a maximum of 21 degrees. Heading into Friday, an isolated thunder showers will be possible for the central interior, dry for Durban on the other hand with a high of 26 degrees. And on Saturday, very patchy thunder showers possible for the northwest as well as Gauteng, but it will be dry for much of the Cape provinces.
Thank you, Louis. After the break, a story scripted by a former Pollsmoor prisoner about the hardship of life under maximum security is set to hit the big screen. Welcome back. Former Pollsmoor prison inmate John Fredericks has scripted a tale about life behind bars and life on the Cape Flats.
And that's a hard life. His film is set for release in a few weeks' time.
But not before a special screening for inmates and cast members, which was held at Pollsmoor last night.
An audience brought to tears by big screen images. Writer and former inmate John Fredericks says recollections of his childhood rape forced him to tell his story.
A couple of years later, actually, while I was writing the script, because that wasn't in this film. And I thought about this whole thing, where did I go wrong? And then it surfaced what happened. You know, I burst out crying once.
The Afrikaans movie with English subtitles, Noem My Skollie, is set in the Cape Flats and Pollsmoor prison during the late 1960s. A group of 4 friends decide to start a gang as a means of survival. The film is a harrowing tale of love, friendship and betrayal. One of the main roles is played by David Manuel, an inmate who admits he's a member of the 28's gang. But he says acting out the part was tough.
The script was a bit, for me it was a bit scary. But as an artist I thought, okay, let me pull this one off. First, people need to know that Freddie Gums, as a prisoner, was a sickle. Understand that, what he did was wrong.
Manuel was out on parole during the filming, but landed back in prison shortly afterwards. Pollsmoor inmates will be the first group of people to see the film, and it will be released at cinemas on the 2nd of September. Peladi Sutusa, Cape Town.
A reminder of the day's top stories before we say goodbye. The EFF rejects opposition parties as coalition partners, but pledges support for the DA. Meanwhile, the DA confirms that Athol Trollip will be mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay. And that's a wrap from the eNews Direct team.
It is indeed. We're back same time tomorrow. Rhythm City's up next.
We do love to hear from you. You can send us an email to enewsdirect@etv.co.za.
Well, of course, you can just talk to us on Twitter and Facebook, and the handle that you need is @eNewsDirect.
Until tomorrow night, have a fantastic evening. Bye-bye.